What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Riding Dad video, or welcome if you are new. Either way, glad to have you. We are putting a chain kit, specifically a chain kit from Speed Kings, onto my M8 Softail, which just happens to be a 2020 Harley Davidson Lowrider S. Let's roll the intro and get cracking.
Riding down a YouTube channel, it's the Riding down a YouTube channel, it's the Riding down a YouTube channel, it's the Riding down a
Alright, so before I continue talking, I want to apologize if you hear a crying baby in the background. Our daughter, who is only 2 months old, is just being super terrible today. So, it shouldn't be that loud if you even hear it, but whatever. So why would you want to get a chain kit? You might not have any clue about what a chain kit is, or whatever. For those of you who don't know, Harleys are belt driven. You probably know that if you're watching this video though. So belts typically almost zero maintenance at all, and they last almost the life of the bike. So you're thinking, why would you want to go from that to something you'd have to maintain that, sounds a little stupid, but one, it's way easier to change your gearing. So you can actually, I think it's really impossible to change gearing with a belt, but chain, you can just change the sprocket setup in the rear, specifically for the Harley, is way easier than changing the front, as you will see. You can get a different, different gear ratio. A chain in general is going to give you more responsive throttle because there's not that bend and tug and flex of a belt. So you're getting more responsive in general, and then you can change the gearing for whatever you want. I went with a slightly, I'll write the gearing now because I think it's a 24 tooth in the beginning, I think, but I'll write it or whatever. Like I said, I got the Speed Kings kit. They have all the same front sprockets, and I got a 53 tooth rear sprocket. There's a 51, a 53, and a 55. So the 53 should give me a little bit more like kind of felt torque, a little bit more acceleration, and a little bit less of a like kind of top speed, but barely a less of a top speed, if that makes sense. The next video after this video, I'll do like an initial review because I haven't even ridden it yet with it on. So I filmed the install of the chain kit ahead of time, and now I'm filming the intro and the outro just for time's sake and what I was doing and everything. So I did go ahead and write down a list of tools that you're going to need that you probably don't have besides like your typical tools just to work on anything. And then a set of tools that will definitely help. So first I'm going to go with the tools that'll definitely help, but not 100% needed. You're definitely going to use an air compressor. If you got one, that's going to help a lot just to blow out some stuff that you'll see I'll talk about later. A wire brush to clean off the old dried up red and blue Loctite and stuff like that. A user's manual, you don't necessarily need it, especially if you're watching this video, because I'm actually going to do a really good job. A couple things you've never seen from me before. I'm going to actually do torque specs for bolts, and I'm going to tell you guys what the torque specs are. So my goal with this video is to be super in depth with it while cutting the time down. I don't want it to be a super long video, but I want to be super informative, so you can watch this video start to finish, grab every tool you can ever imagine for this project that you need, completely understand how to do it, and not even have to crack open a manual, although it's a good idea to have your own and check it or whatever, but not even have to necessarily have it, because I'm going to tell you the torque specs, I'm going to tell you everything, all of that jazz, the order of which the bolts go in, everything like that. So a manual will definitely help. It'll help for anything you have. I just so happen to have one, so you're going to benefit from me having one. Zip ties, specifically only one medium-ish size zip tie, so that'll help. You'll see why, but not needed. A caliper set, digital, is always going to be easier to read than for like little increments. Again, you'll see why it has to do with fitting the new chain. Not needed though necessarily. I would almost borderline say that this is a needed thing. That, the Gojo or Fast Orange brands, it's like little orange containers they sell in hardware stores, and most often they sell it in like auto parts stores. It's like that sandy, kind of slushy material you just rub all over your hands when you do like an oil change or whatever. Not only are you going to get oil on your hands from the primer and stuff, but the chain wax that comes stock on this chain is just stupid. It gets everywhere. It's a nightmare. That helps a lot. I had to wash my hands like 4 times with that, and I can still kind of feel it. Anyway, so that'll help, but not really necessary. Definitely will make your life a lot easier. And then I went without it, but a Jim's tool, or I guess a similar, for the actual sprocket, the sprocket lock, when you are trying to loosen the main nut off of the sprocket itself, and then put the new one on. That tool will help. I did it completely without with no issue, but I've seen installs where people have done it with, and that's just something to think about. If you have money and you're just balling out, go ahead and get that. Tools you are definitely, without a doubt, going to need. Some of them are going to be kind of generic for a chain install, and other are going to be specific to the M8 Softails. And I don't know which is which, so if you have an M8 Softail, you're covered. If not, check your manual and double check what I'm saying. So you're gonna need a big socket. I'll put a picture up here, and everything that I have that's kind of weird, specifically stuff that I ordered from Amazon, I'll post, because the stuff that I got is more than good enough for a 2 or 3 time even job, definitely at least a 1-time job. It's just not quality you'd expect if you were going to be doing this, you know, at a shop every couple of days or something. So the stuff that I got, way cheaper than the other stuff. I saved probably over $200 if you were to buy like the name brand versions of these things, and got really good ratings. I'm telling you, I'm rating them really good, so definitely can trust the products I got. Again, links down below. So you'll need a big socket it's a 2 1/4 size for the main shaft nut that goes on here for the sprocket. You'll need a transmission locking block or stick. There's a Jim's tool, is like a stick, it goes between the 2 gears. I got like a little block, it looks like a stairway, again, picture, and then link below. Worked perfect, and it was $10. The Jim's tool is like $60, I think, so there's $50 in savings right there. You'll need a 36mm socket and a 1 1/8 socket. That is for the rear axle. One is the nut and one is the actual bolt. So that is for the rear axle on this bike. And then a Torx 70, that is for inside the primary. And a 1 3/16 socket, and that is for the clutch. Again, these are kind of normal tools and sockets and stuff, but these are way above the sizes that you would normally get in like a typical socket set, which is why I'm listing them separate. A grinder of some sort, you'll definitely need to break the chain. You can use an actual grinder. I use the Dremel with just a little grinding wheel on it because I already had the Dremel. Worked perfect, no issues there. A torque wrench, if you're gonna do it according to torque, which I strongly suggest for stuff dealing with the primary and the chain sprocket in the rear wheel. That's why I did it. You know, if you've watched any of my stuff, I really don't do torque that much, but I'll explain why I did certain ones for torque specs on this and why certain ones I didn't, specifically because I've had bad results in the past. But there's definitely some stuff that I would not torque down to specs when doing a chain kit on a bike. So you'll need a torque wrench. Blue and red Loctite, definitely need it for this job, specifically the red Loctite for a lot of stuff, but blue also for some stuff. So not a lot of people typically will have red Loctite lying around, so you'll definitely need to get that if you don't have it. I already said the torque wrench, even though I wrote it twice for some reason. Transmission oil. It pretty much goes without saying, you're gonna take the whole primary off, which means the oil is not gonna be salvaged. So you will need new oil. I'm using the Sin 3 or whatever it's called, the stock Harley oil. That's all good for all 3 compartments in the Harley. You might want to use, you know, something else. A ton of Lucas makes some, I think, whatever. There's a ton of different brands. Redshift, I think, or Redline or whatever is another super popular one I know. So really whatever you want or whatever you're going to use for your primary oil. I had some left over from years ago when I bought a kit for my Dyna and I only used a little bit of it. So whatever, you're gonna need oil to fill up the transmission, the primary case. Specifically on the M8 Softails, they are not like the Dynas used to be, and it's just 1 quart and you're done. It's actually 40 liters, I believe. I'll specify it when I'm doing the install and you'll see, but it's definitely more than a quart. I wound up using like 1.5 quart-ish, just to get up to the level that the manual tells you to get up to, because they say the liters and quarts kind of thing is an approximation, and just to go up when you're on a level surface, to go up to a specific spot that you can see in the clutch with the derby cover off. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That is going to be part of the install that you'll actually see. You'll definitely need a jack stand because you're going to need to jack up the bike enough to get the rear wheel off and back on, and snap ring pliers. You're definitely going to need those as well. You're also going to need an inner and an outer primary gasket. That's going to be any kind of whatever bike you have. You're going to need an inner and an outer primary gasket. I want to say it ran me about $70 to get the set of them from Harley. Now I gave you a list of everything you definitely need and a list of things that I believe are going to really help this install go smoothly and professionally done for you. I'm going to show you guys exactly what I did and how I did an install of this chain kit on this M8 Softail, specifically the Lowrider S. So let's do it. All right, so the first step is going to be to drain the oil. First, you remove the actual oil plug, wipe it off. It's a little magnetic plug. Once all your oil is drained, you're gonna have to remove your controls, at least on this bike, when you have mid controls that completely block the primary, and you're gonna have to remove your shift lever. Again, assuming you have mid controls. Remove your derby cover. Be really gentle with these screws. They're super easy to strip. And then you're going to need to remove your actual outer primary cover. You'll see that I put some paper towels down just to protect the actual frame of the bike and everything like that. You are going to have oil. I don't care how long you let this sit. There's going to be oil when you break this free from the inner and the outer primary. All the screws, just take note where they went. There's some short and some long. I break all of them loose first manually. Again, these are somewhat easy to strip. So I break them loose manually and then come back with the power tool and get them out quick. And the next step, for some reason, something happened with my video and the whole file is corrupt, so I apologize, but I'll do a quick little freeze frame and kind of explain what to do. So you're gonna have to remove the chain tensioner. To do that, for me, what makes it easier is using a zip tie. Put it right around there. That way you hold the tension down, and then you're gonna have to remove the 2 screws and the whole thing just comes out. Also use your set of snap ring pliers. Remove the snap ring that's holding in the center of the clutch basket, and that little plate as well as the small bolt will just kind of come out. Now it's time to use either your fancy expensive Jim's tool or your cheap little mini stairway. If you went with the Amazon tool like I did, and you're just gonna put it in between the gear and the chain. This bolt is 1 3/16 and is reverse thread, so righty loosey, lefty tighty. This is a regular lefty-loosey righty-tighty and is a Torx 70. So it's a beefy boy. An impact wrench would definitely help with this. However, the impact wrench I had at the time of doing this part of the install sucked. So you'll see I use a big, nice impact wrench I wound up getting later on for the install of some stuff, but that definitely would have helped with these guys. Once you got both bolts off, go ahead and slide them all off as a set. Try to make sure that all your plates and washers and everything stay together. That way you don't have to do any guessing later on. Remove that gasket, throw it away. Now it's time to remove the inner primary. There are 5 bolts. I break them loose by hand and then come back with the power tool and get them out quick. During this step, you're also going to have to remove the starter, which is the little gear poking out on the top right corner of the primary. On this bike, I did have to remove the right side side cover to be able to get in there, and you are going to need a long tool like the one I'm using, or just a very long extended Allen to remove the bolts on that starter. And it was almost impossible to actually film taking the starter out for the angle that I was at, but I went ahead and took 2 pictures, so here you go. Once you got the starter detached from the primary and all the bolts, go ahead and slide that inner primary right out. We'll have to take this little locking guard off from the main shaft nut. Time to use that gigantic socket. Remember, you have to put the little insert it comes with on the end of the main shaft. Remember, that part is reverse thread, and then the main shaft nut that we're about to break loose is regular thread. And just to give you a heads up, this main shaft nut is crazy torqued on there. There's a ton of red Loctite. Make sure you get yourself a really nice impact wrench. This is the point where I went ahead and bought a new impact wrench, and I got that sucker off pretty quick. If you don't want to do more work than you have to, and you don't care about saving your belt, the easiest way to get the belt out of the bike is to go ahead and cut it. Time to remove the rear axle. Here's where your 36mm and your 1 1/8mm sockets come in handy. And here you can see the beautiful impact wrench that I did wind up getting. And just as a special little tip or note or whatever, on my bike, I did have to take the brake caliper off to be able to slide the rear wheel out. I don't know if that was just me being stupid and couldn't figure something out that was easy, or if it's just the way my bike is designed. Once you get the rear wheel off, go ahead and take the old pulley off for the belt and make sure you clean up the holes very nice, scrub all that blue Loctite out of there. That's where a wire brush is gonna come in handy, and an air gun from your air compressor, and just completely get all that crap out of there. And you do not have to reuse these bolts. The Speed Kings chain kit comes with a spacer, a sprocket, and a locking ring, as well as a washer. First step is going to be to put the spacer on there, followed by the sprocket, followed by the washer, and then put the include bolts in. Speed King says to torque these bolts down to 60 foot-pounds of torque. Once all of them are done to that, go ahead and go to 65 foot-pounds of torque. And these do not need any Loctite at all. You'll see why in a second. Go ahead and get that locking washer to keep those bolts nice. You're gonna have to play with the bolts a little bit. Do not loosen them anymore. If anything, you're gonna have to tighten some of them a little bit more just to fit inside of the holes. It's just a trial and error thing until you get all of them matched up perfectly. Once you have all of them matched up, go ahead and take the ARP bolts. These do need some blue Loctite. Don't need to worry about torquing them down because all you're doing is holding that against the plate to make sure that that ring stays up against the bolts and keeps them locked in. Time to put your new front sprocket on the main shaft. Make sure everything is cleaned off of all that old red Loctite. Go ahead and scrub it down with a wire brush and hit it with the air gun. Make sure you use a decent amount of red Loctite when installing the main shaft nut. And there is a torque spec for this, but it is so gigantic that I can almost guarantee you do not have a torque wrench that it's going to actually get up to it. So just torque the absolute hell out of it down with a nice impact wrench and you should be fine. Time to put that locking ring back on. Use some blue Loctite for those screws. And clean off any residual red Loctite that kind of seeped out. Once you got the rear wheel back in the bike, it's going to be time to go ahead and fit our chain. I do apologize because, again, something happened with the video when I was filming how to break the chain and actually put the chain back together with the master link. So I really do apologize. I don't know what happened with my GoPro this video. The fact that I had so many corrupt files while making this video really worries me for the future health of my GoPro, but thankfully I had enough to actually complete the video for you. So you're gonna go ahead and make sure the adjustment screws that align and tension your rear wheel back and forth, go ahead and make sure those are all the way loosened. Push your rear wheel forward as far as it goes and pull the chain as tight as it will go. I went ahead and marked the link where it was as tight as it would go. That's where you're gonna remove that link and then install the master link in its place. Once your chain is done, time to go back to the primary. Make sure you put that inner primary gasket, the fresh one that you bought from your Harley dealer. Go ahead and put that on first and then get your inner primary. It should just slide on. Make sure you don't forget to put your actual shift lever shaft in there. And it does help to get your starter bolts started in the inner primary cover before you seat it all the way through, because otherwise you're not going to have any room for your hands. And make sure you put some blue Loctite on those bolts. Once you get your starter installed on the inner primary, it's time to put the inner primary bolts back on. I just snug these down and then I'm going to go ahead and hit them with the torque gun. They do have an order. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the torque spec on these for me is 26 to 28 foot-pounds. And I did use a little bit of blue Loctite on these bolts. For the next two bolts, there are torque specs which I did put on the screen, but they are just so hard to hit. What I've usually done for these two is just send them home with an impact wrench and call it a day. And this Torque 70 is lefty-loosey, righty-tighty, regular thread. There's your 1 3/16, and this is lefty-tighty, righty-loosey, reverse thread. And yes, I know this is a Chrome socket, it's not an impact socket, but I don't use it all the time, and I wasn't gonna buy a new one because I already had the socket from my dyno. Reinsert the spindle that sits in the middle of your clutch basket. There's only one orientation it'll fit, and then put your snap ring back in there. Put some blue Loctite on your chain tensioner bolts, slide that under the chain, and then remove the zip tie. Install your fresh new gasket and go ahead and grab your outer primary cover and seat it on. Now these outer primary bolts, not only do they have an order, but they have a torque spec as well. These are the bolts that I've had terrible luck with. When I was doing my Dyna stuff, I stripped out so many of these, not even getting up to the torque, and these were fresh bolts that I bought new from Harley. So I do not follow the torque specs on these, and I don't worry about the order of which they are installed on the screen. I did provide it for you in case you really wanted to do it that way. I do just tighten them down until I feel like they are good and tight, and I've never had an issue with it in the past. All right, now it's time to fill up your primary with oil. Make sure your oil drain plug is back in though before you start filling it up. This is the Sim 3 that I told you I had left over, so I'm just gonna fill it up. And here are the directions on screen for how to make sure it is filled up to the capacity for your bike. Once you got the oil in there, it's time to put your derby cover back on. I don't follow the torque specs on these bolts because they are barely any torque. It's inch-pounds of torque, and they're very small. I just am very gentle with these screws and no Loctite at all. If you had to remove your controls and your shift lever, make sure you put those back on. Again, I scrubbed all the old Loctite off, made sure I cleaned it up, and then put some new blue Loctite on them. All right, so we are done. I actually finished this, like you see, I did this over 2 weeks. However, I finished it this morning a few hours ago. So all the red Loctite I am letting sit for at least a day. Tomorrow morning is going to be my first ride with the chain kit. I am super, super excited. I think it looks cool. I think the performance aspect of it, as far as what the actual torque feel and everything like that, the whole characteristics of how the bike rides and accelerates from now on is gonna be completely changed. I am super excited. I really just wanna ride it, but I'm doing the responsible thing. I'm letting all the blues and the red Loctite do their thing, harden up. That way I don't have any issue at all with it. Also, it's important to note, all that wax on the stock chain, even though I tried to scrub it off as good as possible, everybody that does one of these kits, just the wax is impossible to get all the way off unless you have some magic formula that I've never heard about. So after my initial ride, my plan is to wash the bike and then scrub the chain. I have chain cleaner, so I'm gonna scrub it with the chain cleaner, and then I have chain oil lubricant that I'm gonna lube it up with after the fact. So hopefully I have a long enough ride that all of that wax just kind of gets spun off, at least to as much as it would. But yeah, the quality of the chain kit from Speed Kings is really good. I had some issues dealing with their customer service that I will explain in my next week. I'm gonna do an initial review of how I feel like the chain kit, you know, like is it worth it kind of thing for felt performance. Like I said, have not ridden on the bike yet, the next video you can look forward to is going to be a short little clip of me riding. I'm going to talk about it briefly, and I'll share my experience on the customer service aspect of Speed King. I don't think I mentioned in the beginning, but they have two. They have a star and a 9-spoke, whatever. I just went with the classic one. And again, I'll touch on that when I talk about my customer service, because that has something to do with that as well. But like I said, quality is very good. That's a beefy, beefy chain. It is way different than my Honda Grom chain. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, this is a little bit different for me. I specifically made sure take the time to get some screenshots of my PDF for the torque specs. I showed you guys all the torque specs. I tried to get really in depth with it, and hopefully it's going to be a long video because the install is big. But if you can watch this video and you have a basic knowledge of how sockets and drills and wrenches work and everything, you can do this install. It's in depth. There's a lot of steps, but the base of the install is still a relatively easy install. It's not like you're doing anything crazy like engine intake work or head work or piston or anything like that. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. If you don't know who I am or what I do, Chris, this is my Lowrider S. I have a Honda Grom. I do build videos like this, obviously, on both bikes, rides, reviews, whole bunch of stuff. I have a playlist devoted to the build series of the Lowrider S and a playlist devoted to the Grom. I'm not done with either one of them. A lot of cool plans that I have for them. Constantly have plans for the bikes. You know how it is. You always want to do more stuff to it. So again, make sure you're subscribed, hit the post notifications button, make sure they are turned on. That way you never miss any one of my videos. I'm doing at least one video a week, and occasionally I do giveaways as well. So if you have any questions or whatever, if you just want to just chat with me, I'm a cool guy. Check out my Instagram, send me a direct message on there. I'd be more than happy to chat with you. And I think that is it. Watch one of the videos that are on the screen right now. I really would appreciate it. And until the next time, guys, ride safe, have fun. Dad out.